All right, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. And I don't know if anybody else is thinking this way, but I'm looking at that April 30th on the calendar, and I doubt I'm alone in this. I'm ready for April 2020 to just move off into the rear view, and let's move on to May. Hope everybody else feels that same way. Let's see. Can everybody else hear me in the recordings or hear me in the Q&A? Maybe just like pop something into the chat panel. Looks like we're good to go there. But glad everybody could join us. I'm pumped for today's session. Going to be a great way to end the month. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Mark Stoddard. I run sales and marketing here at ClientSuccess. Also got Dave Blake on the line. And of course, we've got Julie Hogan from Drift. She's our guest. Julie, Dave, what's up? How you guys feeling?
Hey everyone, thanks for having me.
Excited
to hear Julie today.
It's going to be good. You guys hear Julie and Dave okay? Looks like everybody can hear me. Maybe another quick thumbs up for Julie and Dave. Looks like we're all good. Okay, cool.
All right.
Little inside baseball secret for everyone. When Dave and I first decided to start this webinar series, Julie was actually the first email I sent to invite.
Oh, no way.
So I don't even know if I told you that.
No, you didn't. I'm flattered.
Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah, Julie and I go way back. Early days of HubSpot. We could probably fill up this hour with just war stories from those days. But one of the reasons I reached out to her first is like she's always been one of the most forward-thinking, most collaborative CS pros I've ever worked with. And you guys are going to get the benefit of that today. She's doing some really cool advanced stuff at Drift. And so she's going to share a bunch of that, what they're doing right now. And so this is going to be the advanced course. This isn't going to be the basics. This is going to be leveling up beyond the basics. This is going to be the master's PhD stuff today. So you guys ready?
Geez, no pressure, Mark.
Yeah. Just layering it up. Well, cool. So as you guys are seeing here on the slide, this is the end of kind of this tranche of the series. Don't worry, we're going to keep things going. We're going to take a bit of a breather next week and start to plan out the next tranche in this series. So if you want to go back and review, a bunch of you have been reaching out to me saying, hey, I missed such and such a session. I want to go back and review. Next week's your time to do it. You can go back to clientsuccess.com/webinars. All the sessions are posted there. We have 11 and a half sessions up there now. If you were on Kristen Hayer's session last week, you remember we finished the session. She did micromanagement versus management, or the flip side of that. And we got to the end and we still had an hour of Q&A left that we didn't have time for. So she and I hopped on a Zoom yesterday and re-recorded the Q&A, posted that to her. So if you guys want to go back and watch that, that would be great. Of course, after Julie and I wrap today, we're going to post that. So keep an inbox for next week for the future of the series. We're going to be sending some stuff out. But yeah, so that being said, please share us your thoughts. I'll put a link in the chat pane here in a second. Love to get your thoughts, ideas, what topics you want us to cover, what speakers you want to hear from, and just to think about how we can make this better and more exciting for all of you. So Dave, I think you wanted to share a few things. You want to hop in?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Excited to have everybody here. Thanks for joining us. I know end of month is a tough day. So grateful Julie could join. I'm going to say a little bit more about Julie in a minute, but everybody, thank you for joining on such a busy day. I wish you luck on any end of month renewals or expansion or other deals that you're trying to bring in, both as a team and as a company. But the team at ClientSuccess is grateful that you would join us. I'm the founder and CEO. Always love to see everybody on here. There's a bunch of people who have been back over and over again. And I think there's some new folks on the line as well. A couple of things that we always share is one is we're here to help, and we're here to encourage people to help others. We've got this campaign we call Help One, Hire One, and that's just to please reach out to your friends who have been impacted by this corona crisis or COVID crisis. There's so many great professionals who shouldn't be out of work but are right now, and all of us know somebody who's hiring. Knows somebody we can help with looking at a resume, to just talk shop. We certainly do our best to help where we can, and we hope that you will as well. And if you're in a hiring position, or if you have a job opening at your company, please reach out and hire somebody as quickly as you can. This is a great community. The one thing that I love about it is everybody's here to help each other. And so please help where you can. The team at ClientSuccess is always here to help, whether it's to help find a job, whether it's to talk shop about thought leadership, or whether you're here to use our solution. We'd love to be a resource. Now today, I'm so stoked to have Julie with us. She's a great friend. Look at that smile, right? She brings this positive energy and enthusiasm and experience and thought leadership that I love. And what I really respect about Julie, hopefully Julie, you're okay with me sharing this, is she's a working mom, and she's an awesome mom. Just from a distance, I can tell that as well.
Thank you.
If any of you online are also a working mom, maybe give a shout out on the chat. And I just send my kudos to you. I'm a father of 5 kids, and so I get how it is, but I have so much respect for working moms. And so Julie, thanks for being such a great leader. Thanks for joining us and sharing your experience and your passion for a topic that I love, customer success and customer experience. So thanks for coming.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Mark, take it.
Sure. Oh, thank you so much for the intro. And probably an unconventional way to kick off a webinar, but to all the working parents who are home. So I have on these air traffic controller headphones so you can't hear my 3 screaming children. And I was sharing with Mark earlier, I don't have a lock on this door. This was intended to be a child's bedroom, so there's no lock. So there's a chair to barricade my kids from running in. So that's my life hack. hasn't always been working successfully, but it's what we're doing. So shout out to all of you. Happy April 300th. It's what it feels like to some people instead of April 30th. Yeah, right. I know it's been a very long month. And so really excited to get started and to talk a little bit. Mark, want to kick it over and I could share my screen if that works.
Yeah,
and to talk a little bit.
Pause here and Perfect. Let me pause the share and you can turn it over. Getting a bunch of love in the chat pane. You've got, it looks like we have hashtag Team Mom trending.
Yes.
Ariel, she's a mom of 3 under 5.
Oh my gosh.
Nurse.
We're 3 under 6. And I'll share that this week I was supposed to be on the road for an event, and I think a silver lining to being home is that I got the opportunity to be home to be the tooth fairy for the first time. So that was something that, nice. Silver lining in what's happening for sure. And so can everyone see my screen?
Yep, looks great.
Everyone good? Okay. So I'm here again, really grateful to be here and chatting with everybody today about a topic that I'm near and dear to, which is customer success, but then also customer experience. And I want to talk a bit about what customer experience is to us at Drift and how we've been thinking about it. I won't talk that much about myself. Worked at HubSpot for quite a while, and before that was at Deloitte as an analyst, and have always been customer facing. My roles have always been either within success or account management and sales, carrying a bag and or running a team. And this year, I've been helping Drift build customer experience. And to start, I sort of just want to tell a story and talk a little bit about how we came to a point where we were building customer experience at Drift, which was your customers don't care about your internal business. And this is what I mean by that. I think as somebody who is a success practitioner for like close to 10 years, often in this practice, we talk about a few of the same things. We're constantly talking about our health scores, our comp plans, and our measurement. So as practitioners, these are the things that we tend to talk about on webinars like this and at events. These are the things we talk about. But our customers don't really care about that. Our customers care about experience. And we have a tendency to sort of deflect the value or the importance of experience, because in conversations I've had over the past 10 plus years in success, this sometimes can be mischaracterized as fluff, or what I've come to talk to it as is the spirit and swag department. So, experience is a softer component that's not as important as this. We tend to talk a lot about outcomes, and outcomes are important. They're what our customers want. They're what we drive toward in customer success, but our customers need both. And what happens is we sort of pat ourselves on the back and we say, well, our customers want a great experience and our customers want outcomes, and we're all already doing this. The customer centricity slogan has become the most popular thing I see across content on the internet. There's some form of being customer centric or the customer at the center of everything. It's become a very popular tagline to those of us who are working in customer organizations. And also the other thing, and raise of hands or show of hands in chat, if this is also something that you hear a lot, which is not only do we put the customer at the center of everything, but everybody owns the customer. So in like company meetings, somebody will say who owns the customer and everybody's hand goes up and everybody claps. And what happens and what we've learned from doing all of these things, sort of focusing so much on just the outcomes, sort of putting experience in a box, patting ourselves in the back for saying we're customer centric, customer at the center of everything, and then saying we all own the customer, is that it's not enough. And we are bringing more and more customers on each day. So at Drift, we've been experiencing this hyper growth. I joined in 2017. And so the balance of managing a success organization, the things you need to do to run that team efficiently, to drive the outcomes for your customers, were getting in the way of making meaningful progress in areas that our customers needed more of. And a story I'll share is our CEO, David, would share with me, why don't we have a customer advisory board? And why don't we have a really strong engine for driving this constantly, creating a best-in-class experience? Why don't we have more compelling customer stories? Like, why aren't we writing 5, 10, 15 of these a quarter? Why don't we have an advocate network? Like, where's that flywheel of these great people who are happy and enthused with what we do? Executive sponsorship programs, strategic VIP customer programs, world-class customer events, customer awards, external review strategies, ways in which that we can engage with the feedback we're getting externally and responding. And what we realized is that like all these things were piling up that like my job as a success leader, like I literally could not do or would try to do and not do well. I wasn't creating repeatable processes. And we started looking externally. We kept talking and peeling back on the data we were seeing about a positive brand experience. So we talk a lot about being customer centric, but like, what does that really mean? And there are activities and measures separate from retention, separate from adoption, separate from health that were collecting dust in a corner because we weren't paying enough attention to them. And so my takeaway and my learning and what Mark and I will talk about is that we thought success could handle it all and more. That list of things that my CEO is sort of pounding on my door for, we thought we could do it all. And we realized that we can't. And that you only lose if you only solve for customers within customer success. And you also lose if you think everyone owns it. And so we decided to do something about it. And I think what's interesting, just given current times, we're realizing that experience matters more than ever, and having some really distinct plays around the execution of strong experience and the programs you need to be running and the partnerships you have to be leading cross-functionally are of the highest importance across the business. Customer experience is no longer the thing that you get to, because all of those outcome customer health related programs are the things that matter. The things you invest in for the experience are paramount right now. And so what I'd love to get into with Mark is to talk a little bit about some of the things we've been doing, some of the things we've learned, and have a discussion with all of you. So just a few slides to kick off. And I think instead of just having slides up, we can have faces and chat and have a conversation about that.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that's cool, so like give us a little bit more of the context behind. So David was pushing you on with that kind of why don't we have slide. Is that something that he came and expected the customer success team to own? Is that something that he expected marketing to own? Was he even thinking about it at that point? Like, who should own it at that point? Like, how did that conversation evolve?
Yeah, it was interesting because we have a tendency at Drift, and I'd encourage other companies to sort of think through this. As soon as I get asked to do something, I try to go find the 5 or 6 or 7 other companies who are already doing it and doing it better.
Okay,
And
cool.
so I started talking to friends of mine in the network, and I learned like a few themes. I think one was it was all over the place. So maybe it was within success, but you didn't really have an owner of it. Maybe it was in marketing, but what I learned there was there was sort of this like it would be in marketing, but like begrudgingly in marketing. It's in marketing, but like we don't feel like we have enough ownership over it. Or the other was that similar to what I just walked through, like it just wasn't being prioritized. Like these things, maybe the CEO or the leader in that org felt like those things were extra or fluff or not really measurable and revenue related. And so I learned that it sort of lived everywhere and there wasn't one solid model. And as we were turning into 2020, we realized that the feedback from our customers was that they felt like they were missing out on ways in which they could better engage with Drift and like wanted these things. And we wanted to be able to give them to them. And where we landed was that when you talk about marketing, marketing frequently is thought of as everything to build pipeline and drive lead gen. And we had this conversation about if we're going to do customer experience the right way, we need the vision we have or the vision we put out into the world for attracting prospects to Drift to carry on throughout the entire customer journey. And we really set an anchor around customer experience being the experience of that brand brought to life beyond just being a prospect that then it becomes closed won, but throughout that customer's entire journey with you. And so with the addition of our CMO, Trisha Gelman, who joined us this year, we built customer experience as a component, a core function of marketing. And the way I talk about it is that with
it's
that,
like share like the structure of the team. Like you've got customer success, you've got onboarding, like you guys have a really unique structure, and maybe even like talk through a little bit about how you evolved to where you're at.
Yeah. So with that, with thinking of it this way, where we landed was that, and the way I talk about it is the customer has earned a seat at the go-to-market table. We now think about it not just as our silos of marketing, sales, and success, but customer experience sits across the three as a strategic partner to delivering the value messaging, the programs, the processes, and the feedback you need in order to fuel that consistency across the customer journey. So functionally, I replaced myself. So funny conversation, this happens sometimes. It was like, please fire yourself. Like, find somebody who can come in and operate these teams you've built and take this and help us unite it across the team. And so that's really the way we think about it. And what's interesting, and I'm sure there are conversations we could have forever about this, I got a lot of flack from my peers in the customer success community. They were like, no, this has to live in success. This cannot be something that marketing takes or marketing owns. And I think just going through this experience of now becoming a function within the marketing organization and sort of seeing that dissonance between success feeling like they have to own all of this work and feeling like it creates a disconnect. My goal is to unify those silos of marketing, sales, success. I'll add product as well, and making sure we are singing from the same song sheet when it comes to what is ROI for our customers, what are outcomes, what is a good experience, and how do we collectively align around the feedback we're getting from our customers consistently, so we're ensuring that the things we're all doing are directly in line with the things our customers are asking for and need.
Yeah, this is when I said at the beginning, like, this is the advanced stuff. This is the advanced stuff we're talking about here. Because I mean, I don't know of anybody else that is on the call that's kind of thinking about it at this level. Like everybody on the call, we've got customer success teams, and maybe if I'm wrong, please correct me in the chat. But it feels like customer success in a lot of cases just kind of started achieving its quote unquote seat at the table, and you guys have taken, okay, customer success, great. Now we're going one level deeper to not just the post-sales management team, to thinking about the customer experience across the entire journey. That's really cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool.
There's a great question in here too, which is like both outcomes and experience are important, but which is more important?
Yeah, thanks for that, Tom.
And it's such a good question, and it reminds me of the question that you often hear in a different category, which is it customer first? Is it employee first? Right? Like a lot of companies sort of struggle with that. And when I think about that, it's like it's people first. And so when we say is it outcomes first or experience first, when it's when you think about trying to disassociate those two things, you then are putting yourself in this priority race. Like, is it one or the other? It has to be both. And
Sure.
where we landed on being able to drive both is having individuals who are responsible for what those things are. I think if you're trying to execute both as a leader, meaning that you are innovating and operating a large multinational success organization and also trying to own all of those programmatic things that I mentioned, voice of the customer is another one that I'll talk about. It is impossible to do all of those things incredibly well. And so we have a motto, which is simplify, focus, repeat. And we basically took, like, what are the actual things that we know we have gaps on and we know are broken? And how can we build the right strategy, simplify, focus, repeat, and give people really clear directives and measures that they have to align their teams around. And that's been really important and really helpful for us in being able to align our mission, our work, the things that we're actually doing. So it's not run the success org and then try to get all these things done if you can, because you know the routine, the rhythm, end of month, everything that has to happen in order to run that program well. So for us, it was figuring out the right home in the business. And for us, that's marketing. And then critically focusing on making sure this is a cross-functional strategy in partnership with all of the teams in the company.
So what did you do next after that? Because I mean, if simplify, focus, repeat is the mantra, and originally this idea came from David asking you, a half a dozen questions of why don't we have advocacy or platforms or partnerships or all this stuff. Like, where did you choose to focus once you got through, okay, we're going to have this sit inside of marketing? Like, where do you kind of start first? So I think a lot of people are probably sitting there thinking, really cool idea, really good, high level, but like, where do I go first? Where do I step? What's my first step?
Yeah. So we looked first at, like, what problem are we trying to solve? And how do we ensure that this team, thinking about customer experience, is something that's truly going to move the needle for our customers and for our business. And one of the biggest challenges we had, and I'm curious to hear for others where they fall here, was that we were talking the talk, but we weren't walking the walk. So we were saying, we're the customer is at the center of everything. Okay, where is our consolidated view on customer sentiment? How are we truly holding ourselves accountable to actioning customer feedback? And I think in theory, we were doing it, or we wanted to pat ourselves on the back for doing it, right? Like, oh, we heard this thing on Twitter, or we saw this review on G2 Crowd or Capterra or Trustpilot, but we weren't really doing it with routine and rhythm. And so we had to really be honest about, like, what does it mean to live the values that we are putting out into the universe, and how do we make sure that we're building a repeatable process? And so where that landed us was identifying somebody who could take that on as a critical function. So the first hire, and really the first tenant that we focused on, was building a voice of the customer program. And voice of the customer can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I went through a similar process, which was, what does best in class look like? What do our role models look like? What are other people doing? I sort of learned, the models and the structures that different companies had. And then what we realized was that in order for this to work for Drift and for us to solve the gaps we had, was that we wanted to bring in somebody and make that person's mission, one, creating listening channels across the entire customer journey that could be repeated and we could build an engine around. And second, to facilitate the conversations and the commitments to customer needs. And so by creating the structure and the strategy and the process for those listening channels across the journey, then being able to consolidate that feedback with regularity and bring it back to the leaders of each function, sales, marketing, customer success, product, so that we could commit to the things that we needed those teams to action or incorporate into their quarterly goals, and start really having dialogues around things that matter. And so for us, the concept, she started Q1. This week we're launching what we're calling our first quarterly customer sentiment reviews. And these are reviews of feedback we collect across that quarter, across different stages of the customer's life. with themes and action items and recommended next steps that we commit and partner on. So for us, like getting that down so that we could really collect and gather and understand what our customers are actually telling us and where we needed to create those levers for improvement, and also like those milestone goals that we want to create improvement against was our first step.
So speaking of milestone goals, I know we worked together for a long time, and you're very metrics driven. I'm very metrics driven. Like in the early stages of this process, are you thinking about metrics? Are you, if so, like what are the metrics you're thinking about working toward? Like voice of the customer sometimes can get lost in like, what are the metrics you're driving? Like how are you guys thinking about metrics, and how maybe has that evolved as you've started doing this?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually looking for a sheet of paper. I held up in a meeting that we had earlier. Okay, this is going to seem crazy, but I'm going to show this to you in a minute as I talk through it. So I think the way I think about this is what can happen sometimes is we talk about being metrics driven, and what you want to avoid is a metric just for a sake of a metric. Like this is going to improve revenue by whatever percentage.
Sure.
And then you start forcing behavior in a way that doesn't really make sense. For us, and a process that's worked really well for us is the idea of really thinking about like milestones and motions. Like if this thing is really gonna make a difference, launching a voice of the customer program, what do we attach that to? And for us, it was looking at our top line goals, which for most organizations across the company are the influence on revenue. And so even if you're in product, like being able to influence and attribute your work to revenue, all of us have some revenue related goals. We are no different. And so to sort of unpack from there, in order to influence revenue, what do you need to do first? And for us, as we started unpacking and really thinking about how we can move the needle on our the sentiment of our customers, and that sentiment of our customers correlating with their retention, we needed to drive engagement. And so we set goals to start around the percentage of customers in very specific segments and their engagement with us across this customer sentiment journey. Those goals will change. So as we increase engagement, and the way that we've done that is through a few different things. Running campaigns and starting to build programs. I think I'm somebody who's, I've always worked with customers. I've also always worked in marketing tech. And what's interesting is I don't think I ever realized as a leader in success, the value and the importance of customer marketing.
Sure.
I always wanted it. I always sort of fought for it, but I never really knew what it meant. And now, thinking about things like customer ABM, so account-based marketing into strategic customers, the value of campaigns to help drive engagement for certain things, we were really able to start thinking about how do we communicate with our customers and what are measures of engagement, both with that content and then content that helps them align with a feedback channel, and knowing that we are responding to that feedback channel. I'd say another component of this, when we talk about engagement as that goal, so for us, it's percentage of customers engaging with us. We started looking to external review sites, and again, curious to hear others in your experiences with this, but that was something that never really had a home. Like, who's supposed to respond to customers who are sharing feedback? And one of the things we learned was that when those are not responded to, and those are not engaged with quickly, you lose that engagement and you lose that feedback loop. So simply by creating an engine for us, and for us, we respond within 24 hours personally to every single thing that comes through. In addition to starting to run some campaigns around getting people to respond, we've seen engagement. And then as a result of that engagement, our ability to get feedback, action that feedback, increase incredibly since the beginning of the year. And so that became an avenue that we focused a very specific program on. We now have an engine in place for it. Similar to how you may see a tool like Glassdoor, where you will see, if a company has a Glassdoor profile and their CEO or people leaders aren't responding, that employee engagement as well as prospect engagement is tough. It's no different for your customers. And if you think about that and a program around something as important as that, and the ability to then use that as foundation for continued prospect and pipeline building, as well as continued customer stories, there's a whole process and system there that we're just starting to sort of learn and uncover.
Yeah, I think we could probably do a whole session just on like proper engagement on review sites. I see like one of the sessions we did the other day was thinking about the concept of like referrals potentially being your only source of new customers for the next X period of time. And, you know, happy customers that are reviewing you could be an awesome source for that. All right, as expected, the Q&A is blowing up. And so I want to switch gears and jump into some of these questions. So I'm going to go back a little bit. We might end up retracking on some of the stuff, some of the questions were asked a few minutes ago.
Through that conversation, I'll show you a measurement thing too. But let's keep talking, because this will probably come up in one of the questions. I'm reading them too.
All right, let's see. So Erica asked the question, what did the conversation look like with leadership regarding ownership for you? Did they bring it to you? Did you bring it to them? Sounded like that was more kind of a fluid conversation that you and David had together. Is there anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah. So he came to me and shared, I'll tell you a little bit of the story too, because I think it's helpful for context. He was like, I have this vision of a stool in my head. And he's like, on the stool, like there are three legs on the stool. There's customer support, there's customer success, and what's missing is customer experience. And you need that third leg to keep the stool up, because in the absence of a strong support organization, a strong success organization aligned with experience, we're not able to deliver what we want to. So we had this conversation about what that meant, and then his vision for experience to then extend beyond that, like basically go support the other stools. Like when we think about marketing and product and sales, like all of this has to help us align our value messaging and the way in which we think about the brand experience across every single part of the life cycle. And then he said, where do you think this should live? And so we talked for a while, like, does this remain part of success? Does this remain part of, or does this become its own thing? And what we've learned in a conversation we've been having, given that we sit in the marketing space, is this idea of like the CMO 2.0, where marketing is evolving beyond and playing a much bigger role in organizations beyond just pipeline generation. And we believe at Drift, and I think a lot of us believe in the marketing community, that the influence of and the importance of brands across everything that your company touches is something that will help us build a program like this that doesn't sort of sit in a component part of success, but sits at that go-to-market table and is influencing and partnering across all functions. And so,
and I know you guys recently brought in a new CMO, like, and I'm assuming like those conversations are going on at the same time of you're having this conversation. Like, how did you guys think about the CMO that you brought in light of this conversation?
Yeah, it's a great question, because as we were doing that search and as we were engaging with different people, someone who was thinking that way was really important for us. So we did not want to bring on a CMO who was simply, here's my demand gen strategy, I'm going to bring these leads in and that's it. We needed somebody who's going to help us extend this vision of how do we think about our value messaging when we're attracting leads to our business, but then thinking about that and carrying it across. I think for me, as somebody who's been in success, hearing her point of view on the importance of customer marketing, and it's interesting too, as I was talking to different peers and different people I know, I got a lot of like warnings. So, this seems like a silly move. Like, you're moving away from like a guaranteed revenue related job. Why would you do that? Customer marketing is the first thing to get cut. Customer experience is fluffy. Like, I got a lot of.
Yeah. Oftentimes your first piece of advice when you get a career is like, tie yourself, build something or sell something.
Be in one of these groups.
My first day at HubSpot, I remember Brian Halligan pulled us all aside and said, go build something or sell something or save something. Like, tie yourself to the income statement some way. And yeah, there's an element that says what you're doing is pulling a little bit away from that, if not done right.
Yeah. And I think that actually sort of lit a fire under me more, because the more you look, and if I go back to that list of things and the unintentional silos that can start to become created if you do not have commitment and process unifying those functions, you will never get to a place where, or at least we didn't feel like we were going to get to a place where we were going to accelerate the right product forward, the right handover from sales to success forward, the right structure for the programs that we want to be running for our customers if we didn't put something across all of those. And so an example I'll share with you is when you think about a gap that a lot of companies tend to have, which is the articulation of value and packaging that in a way that's really simple and easy for your sales teams to describe, really simple and easy for your customers to understand, and then really simple and easy to package and share with your economic buyer when renewal and expansion opportunities come up. That is a big piece of what we're focused on in Q2 and being able to help drive that. You tell me that that's not revenue related, right? Like, and so that's where, and I'm in a fortunate spot where my CMO and CRO and CEO and CFO, I've got the C's aligned and they want this and believe in it. And I think entering this world of customer experience, we've got to do a better job articulating the impact you can have on revenue and how programs like that are so important to helping your company unify around what you're doing for your customers.
So a huge component too of everything that you've mentioned is just listening and at all the different touch points. And we've got several questions that are kind of related to listening. Vanessa makes the point here of a great customer experience is by design, not by chance. You need listening posts in multiple places, both macro and micro. Tom, he says, Julie, how are you guys collecting feedback, whether process or tools used regarding your customer experience? Erica asks, what do you mean by listening channels? So like those are all kind of related. Maybe try to speak to that a little bit, like more tactically what you guys are doing there.
Absolutely. So we had a really good process and still do really good process for what we call our employee sentiment engine. And so a lot of times the questions I get are like, is it NPS? Is it this? Is it that? And I think like the criticism of NPS, right, is that it's point in time and it's a lagging indicator and you're always looking backward and it's hard. And what we started to learn from looking at how well run our employee engine was, our employee sentiment engine was that it put together a number of different measures over a period of time. So when we look at a quarter, yes, there's an NPS survey that goes out. We're also, we use a tool called Tiny Pulse to get pulse checks, so like sort of incremental pulse checks. And so that in addition to, it's great. We're also 15.5 users, so like using 15.5 to understand employee engagement. And then the last is like, what is that external feedback? So like many companies, we take a look at Glassdoor. So in looking at all of those measures, what can we sort of understand about what's happening at the department level when we bring those together? And this engine, there's a question in there from Vanessa. Our engine was like, okay, so how do we create a rhythm and routine around collecting this information, analyzing it, and then sharing the results and feedback out into the departments? And we've had this running for about a year with really positive results, because again, going back to that mantra of like simplify, focus, repeat, we could gather that. We have somebody who's responsible for aggregating that, analyzing it, and sharing results with leaders of teams. We've been able to really go deep on specific themes and topics to drive improvement. And we looked at that and said, it should be no different for our customers. And so sort of taking the employee example, but looking at a customer journey, how can we do a better job when we think about the phases? So from onboarding, we now are running, and we just changed survey tools, and I'll figure out which one it is and I'll share it in the follow-up. But we're now running at a very specific point in time, a pulse check on onboarding. We're running a post onboarding. And then for us, like we looked very closely at the success criteria timeline. So like at what point in time do we really want to make sure we're anchoring value? These people have seen outcomes. That is the point in time when we're sending an NPS. And so the gathering of data across, when I talk about listening channels, the value of data across those listening channels, across the journey is what we look at. we're then also very tightly aligned with our product organization. One of the key, just from like my world of being somebody who's carrying a bag as an account manager and a CSM, was that I wasn't going to leave where I was previously unless our product organization cared deeply about the customer. And my question in the interview was like, will you pick up the phone and talk to customers? And he does. But is that alignment real? And we have worked together closely on product market fit. So really understanding like, how sad would you be if you no longer had this? And also like ease of use. How hard or easy is it for you to do the thing you want to do? The analyst we've hired who's working for us in Voice of the Customer is able to take all of those pieces of feedback and unify it for us, which has been really valuable, because it's not, hey, this is feedback the product team has. Hey, this is feedback the onboarding team has. Hey, this is feedback that the customer success or account management team has. We are able to say, this is feedback from across different stages of the customer's journey that we're looking at over a quarter period of time, looking at the themes, taking the scores, and bringing it to each department. So working with the sales team to say, here are the themes we saw that are related to this stage of the customer journey that you sales are responsible for. And let's go in and start to make some decisions around what we prioritize. And I'm happy, like we could probably do a whole other session on like the tooling.
Yeah, we could just do a masterclass series on all this.
So. That at a high level is how we measure and analyze. So it's not looking at one score. It's looking at pulse check plus point in time and aggregating that in a way that really helps you understand loyalty, satisfaction, and sentiment.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you're getting a ton of plus ones, bingos, yes to having product pick up the phone. Yes, you need, to get customer success, you need both CX and CO, all of those things. Let's see here. Scott here says, I feel like my role managing CS means I need to advocate for CX across every department, leading to the outcomes that I'm hoping to drive for customers. So, there's a few of these questions that are like, we obviously are not to the, meta level of where Drift is at on this. We're still in CS. We still have a traditional CS team, and, we're trying to figure out, where does this customer experience live? Who actually does own the customer in this previous world? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think where I kind of got stuck in trying to think about this at the beginning and thinking about it from the ground up was that I was trying to back it all into those questions, like who owns this, and like what is the title and where does this live? And I feel like I finally like broke free from that when I focus more so on the gaps. Like forget ownership and whatever. Where are the gaps today? If you had to sit down with a whiteboard, or now we're all at home, so like with a piece of paper, and just think about the gaps you have, what is the job to be done? And so start there. And for it's funny because I hadn't even really thought about voice of the customer until I sat down and did that exercise of like, if we're really going to make an impact and we're thinking about our ability to drive better outcomes for our customer, create a better experience, and increase the retention and revenue and just engagement with our brands, what is the biggest thing? And in doing that exercise, and it was a lot of work. Like I worked with my peers, and I think my peers across functions. So talking with sales, talking with product, talking with marketing, talking with CSMs. And I think what I learned was like that dissonance of like really understanding what our customers were saying and what was going on, and what levers we needed to pull became the biggest problem to solve. And I think now that we've done that, like that then helped formulate like, okay, so
sure.
who needs to own this? Who needs to do it? So that would be my advice. Like sit down and really think like okay, so if you hire somebody to do customer experience, what are they going to do? What are you going to hold them accountable to? And what problems need to be solved?
Cool. No, that's really good. Bunch of more kind of comments in here. Scott says, my 2 cents, when there's a gap or failure in CX, we need to do a solid 5 whys analysis to get to the heart of the matter. That might lead to a tactic that's under CS, but it could be anywhere. It could be in product, could be in sales, could be in marketing, could be in anywhere. So it's a really good point. I think everyone would agree with that, Scott.
Such a good point. And I'll share too, I think what can happen sometimes is, and like you've all probably felt this, where it's like, oh, especially if you're early stage, like if you're a company with like, I would say like 5 to 100, even 150 employees, sometimes all of the customer stuff goes to the customer people, but it really, like it's something that needs to be fixed in your brand messaging. It's something that needs to be fixed in the sales to CS handoff, or it's something that we really shouldn't be putting people on. Like it should be easy for people to just understand how to do this in the product. And so that's what we found these conversations help drive, is it takes some of the pressure off of the CS organization, because even though a lot of times we say everybody owns the customer, you all know from doing the job that a lot of times all customer things end up going to the CSMs, and the CSMs play, I always call it, it's like a series of infomercials. Their job and their duty each day is to engage with their customer, but then there are like these 5 other things that they have to, like, could you help us shoot this email out? Could you help us invite people to this event? Sure. Could you help us do that? And you get your CSMs, your customer people, away from actually serving their customers.
Yeah, I mean, there's 100 different things that you can dig into. Like one of the things that I often see get overlooked is looking at kind of, especially your customer facing teams, and understanding what are they compensated on? What are they incentivized on? Because oftentimes that has drastic impacts on your customer experience. If your sales team's compensated or your customer success team's incentivized a certain way, that's going to drive certain outcomes that a lot of people don't really understand, but until they actually have lived through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm taking a look at Vanessa's comment too, which position to take customer support, CE, CX, when sales is overselling, can easily become a dumping ground for all Band-Aids. And like
sales has never oversold a product. I don't know what you're talking about. Dude.
But it's a great point, and a great place to bring data, right? And I think, like, Mark, you and I, we probably over the past however many years we've known each other have probably been in these conversations of like, hey Mark, we got to talk about this deal, or we got to talk about this thing. And what's nice about having data and having feedback is that you have a neutral third party who's sitting across all teams, who is then bringing the facts to the table. So it's not CS.
So you're just the
sales.
adjudicator. That's all. That's the main value of it here. Just the referee third party. No, you didn't screw up. So screwed up.
But it is, I do think it is a data-driven, repeatable model, where the other point too is, let's say there was an incident, or there was something, or like I hear this all the time that like sales is overselling. Are we seeing that, or are we not? And are there trends, and are there proof points that are helping us understand why and where that's happening? Whoever made the comment earlier about the 5 whys, I love that process, because it takes out emotion, it takes out blame, and it just focuses you on getting to the root of the problem. And what's nice about having this data-driven customer feedback approach across functions is that you are every quarter having that conversation and making taking dedicated action on where you want to improve. And often the improvements you're making for your customers aren't just living within the success organization. The beauty of this is it's impacting your go-to-market messaging, your sales process, your enablement tools. All of those things become conversations.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to give a shout out to Klaas. I know he's in Estonia. He's been a frequent guest on these.
Hi,
he's staying up late. Good to hear from you again. He makes a comment that so his more question here is, so customer success should be focused on outcomes, and customer experience should be focused on the experience while doing that. So I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, I'll add to that. That if experience if your programs, in the way in which you're measuring those programs, are not directly tied to specific business outcomes and top line revenue goals, you have to rethink what you're doing. An example I'll share is we have very specific, like many organizations, have very specific goals for customer health and onboarding completion. And so we have very specific experience programs that are helping to drive those goals. And so similar to what you see in marketing sometimes, which is like, was this sourced or was this influenced? We want to be able to track the influenced behavior or the influence impact of the programs we're running to those goals. And so you have to be, we just went through Q2 goal planning. And I probably spent a week working with leaders in CS, leaders in product, leaders in sales, like really thinking about like, what are the things we're trying to drive and what are the things that are going to be in service to our ability to hit these business goals. And so I don't think if you're in CX, you can sort of like sit in your, sit back and be like, well, they're really responsible for that, and I'm doing this over here. Like, you've got to be integrated across the whole company if it's really going to make a financial difference.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the main thing that everyone seems to be, really driving home with everyone is like, this is not a customer success. This is not just product. This is not just marketing. Yeah, you guys have tactically decided that for now this sits under marketing, but this really touches every piece of the business.
Yes, exactly. And I love what Bob just said here too, which is it avoids the emergence of silos in the first place. Yes, and I think a big part of this was like, we've lived those silos, right? And you've lived those.
My job title is a silo by definition, right?
Yeah, right. And it breaks the friction for your customers as well. And like, that's the thing that we've been talking a lot about, which is like, you want your customers to have a frictionless experience. And when I go back to my first slide, like, your customers do not care about your business process. And so our goal as we continue to innovate this, and listen to, like, we're still figuring this out. It's not perfect, but we want to create as a fluidity and a frictionless experience for our customers so that regardless of who they're engaging with, we've been very thoughtful about the engagement they have with our brand from beginning to end. And we don't think we can do that well if we're not thinking about that experience from beginning to end across all touch points of the business.
So, and maybe this is a bit of an unfair question, but it's kind of looking forward. Like, we're so used to, speaking of silos, okay, you have a sales team and you have a certain amount of people that are out there selling. You have a customer success team, and that's a certain amount of people that are either onboarding or supporting or upselling, cross-selling, renewing customers. And, you've got people with that skill set that are dedicated to that. Like, for you, what are you thinking about? How does a customer experience team evolve? Are there actually, like, you said right now, I think you said you have you have yourself, you have an analyst on the team. Like, what are the skill sets you're thinking about? Like, how does that type of a team evolve? And I hesitate to call it a team, because when I say team, it oftentimes, creates another silo. But like, how does that evolve over, the next, 6, 12, 18 months for you guys, you think?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. Because I think part of my transition into this role was really learning about the importance of other departments and other roles in relation to driving your customer's experience. And this first role of voice of the customer, she has a sort of combination of marketing analyst and CS in her background. So she is somebody who understands the analytics and what goes into measuring and aggregating and analyzing data, and also working cross-functionally among big teams, but also understands the customer, right? She's done the job before.
It's got to be a bit of a unicorn to find, very techie, data-driven, CS professional. How did you find that person, or how do you train for that person, you think?
Yeah, I'd say yes and no. Like, I thought that would be the case, but what I'm finding too is, like, in enterprise technology companies, this concept of CX has been around for a while, and it's also been like a focus point. And so I sort of had to look out of where I was typically hiring customer success people. I also think as we think about growth and what else we need, I find the like anti job description is helpful as well. Like, what this job isn't and what our core hires won't be in the future are people who are just like, I love customers and I love to do like the fun things to make them happy. Again, like moving out of spirit and swag, that is all really important. We could also talk about customer awards and programs. Like, I don't want to take away from the importance, the impact of that, but I need, and I think the customer experience teams of the future are people who have experience knowing what it means to care for customers. Whether you've brought them in through sales, you've nurtured them in CS or onboarding, or you've been an account manager and have like really worked to solidify the value and the outcomes they see. Somebody who has that perspective and is hungry to help drive the strategic alignment across different teams. The other role that I've been learning a lot about, and that I think will be sort of our next wave, is somebody who's able to really dig into building our advocacy programs and helping us articulate the story and the path to success to fuel growth and then to help continue to fuel adoption. And so these are marketers, but these are marketers who deeply understand what it takes to get a customer to see success and how to tell a story. I think a lot of times when you read case studies, we like over-index on the data, the details, the information. When you talk to customers, 99% of the time they come to you and are like, who can I learn from? Who's done this? Who's like me, who's run into these same problems? And
Sure.
Someone who can help really articulate those stories for your business is so impactful.
I can't disagree with anything you've said there. So like, as we're coming to the end here, are there any questions that jump out to you that you wanted to make sure we get to, or is there any kind of like final things that you want to share? I don't know if we'll have time to get to everything, and I'll do a deep dive on the Q&A afterwards. And if there's any big questions that we've really missed out on, we'll either Julie and I will hop back on and re-record, or we'll answer them in a follow-up
happy
email.
to do any of that.
Is there any things that are jumping out to you that you want to make sure that you get to?
I think we covered a lot. There's a great one from Roxanne I'd love to cover, which is clients do not always like or spend time. Keeping the question short is part of QBR. We didn't talk about QBR. So quarterly business reviews, strategic business reviews, the engagement there. That is something that we're partnering really closely, both within our enablement teams and success and marketing, to ensure that we're doing things like QBR and creating surveys that genuinely feel like they're adding value to our customers. Again, going back to like the business process, you want to get out of the habit of CS is a good CS if they're executing all these tasks in their CRM and like, did I do my QBR? Yes. But if it hasn't added any value, it also, if you don't have the right seat at the table from the company to really see the impact of what your product or service has done, what's the point of having it if your decision maker or economic buyer isn't engaged? And so we're putting a lot of thought into how to ensure we're aligned on like the value and the impact and like the customer friendliness of these types of surveys and events. And then we're also spending a lot of time thinking about who we need involved and how we can measure engagement of those influencers, blockers. It's a whole other category that we're starting to unpack around your customers and your users and the way in which you engage and create experiences for all of them. For us at Drift, our economic buyer is usually the VP of demand gen or digital marketing, but the driver of strategy is the CMO. And we tend to spend a lot of time with the user and the economic buyer, but not the driver of overall marketing strategy. So if chat and the things that we do aren't aligned with that vision, and we're not bringing them up to speed on the content, the opportunities we have for them to build a network of forward-thinking CMOs, we're losing huge opportunities for buy-in. So there's a whole other category of thinking about engaging the right people, the right time with the right content.
This has been awesome. I've loved it. I've learned a ton. I can just vouch for a bunch of people in here. Scott says this is the best webinar he's joined on the series so far.
Thank
you know, Julie, you've got some fans out there. He also says, can I download your brain into a Google Doc so I can reference it? So my last piece of advice for everybody is, you know, go back. We'll post the recording, go back, review it, because there's a ton of stuff here that we haven't, you know, been able to get all through, but you know, you'll learn a ton by that. Also, I hope you're okay with me saying this, reach out, follow Julie on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
I can tell you that, hope you're okay with me saying this, you recently had your third child, and I remember the week you got back from maternity leave, because my LinkedIn feed just blew up with great stuff. So you're a great follow on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
You're a great friend. Really appreciate it. And yeah, any last words you want to share? Thank you. No, I just appreciate the conversation and also the amount of people joining. I know this is a challenging time for so many people. It's challenging for our customers, and just happy to talk with people who are interested and passionate about this. So please reach out to me.
Happy to connect. Cheers to all you moms out there. Can't believe I did not get interrupted by one child, and my 10-month-old daughter, Claire, slept the whole time. She's literally in the next room having a nap. So that's a win for me.
Good day. Moving into May on a win.
Yeah, I know, right? Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for hosting, Dave and Mark.
Yeah, you got it.
Appreciate all the work you're doing, and take care, everybody. Thanks so much for a great conversation. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye.